And those joining us virtually, this is the March 2026 monthly meeting of Hasp. Just a reminder for everybody in the auditorium, please put your phone on airplane mode or turn it down. And I think I remembered to do mine. So. Okay, just a few important announcements. One is that the annual Hasp review is still looking for input, and submissions are being accepted through March 31, and please email all written submissions to hasp@hope.edu. But remember, it's not just for writings and visual arts. We're accepting performance arts too. So if you want to dance your time away in front of us all, here's your opportunity. If you have questions, contact the Communications Committee Chair, Mary Jo O'Connor, or the Hasp office. Okay, we also have 3 new members. If you're here as I call your name, would you please stand so we can recognize you? And to the older members, we will introduce ourselves to you after the meeting. Hiroko Dahlman, Rick Dahlman, and Will Polick. Okay, great. Just a reminder on monthly meetings. In April, we will have 2 monthly meetings. One will be April 7th, on our usual day of the month, and it will be about technology and democracy, imminent and emerging concerns. And April 28th will be our next meeting instead of May 5. This is so you can avoid the madhouse downtown during tulip time. We'll have more announcements on that as things go along, but I just wanted you to remember there's 2 in April. Okay, I also wanted to share with you, as you're aware, Dr. Fred Johnson III passed away last week. Dr. Johnson was a beloved part of Hasp. He served as a presenter, a board member, a teacher, a mentor, a colleague, and a friend. You are invited to gather at the celebration of his life on Friday, March 13 at 2 p.m. in the Dimnat Memorial Chapel. I also want you to be aware that at the board meeting in March 17, we will discuss how best to honor his legacy. So just keeping that in mind because it's a big loss to a whole lot of us. And his classes would sell out in 20 minutes when it's sign-up day. Okay, now we're ready for today's program. And I don't get to introduce the speaker. I have somebody else to do that. But I will tell you his name is Bill Pink, and he's president of Ferris State University. And he just gave me a bulldog, because I went to Kendall, which is part of Ferris State. So our speaker will be introduced by our Hasp member, Randall Miller, who serves on the curriculum committee as science, medical, and technical chair. Just remember, after the presentation, we'll take questions from the audience, but as a reminder, it's not the time to voice your opinion, it's the time to ask clarifying questions. Okay, Randall, you're on.
Thank you, Alice. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Dr. Bill Pink became the president of Ferris State University in July of 2022, and he's the first African American to lead that university since its founding in 1884. Dr. Pink strongly believes in the power of education and is passionate about providing opportunities for students to be successful. Prior to leading Ferris State, he was the president of Grand Rapids Community College, and he was vice president for academic affairs at Oklahoma State University. Governor Whitmer appointed him to the growing Michigan Together Council to help grow the state's population, and he serves on the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, working to grow the state's industry and workforce. He's a member of the Higher Learning Commission Board of Trustees and also serves on the American Council of Education Board of Directors, working with leaders from across the nation to help develop and shape public policy in education. In West Michigan, he serves on the board of Corewell Health West Michigan and is board chair for the Heart of West Michigan United Way. Dr. Pink was named Newsmaker of the Year in Education by the Grand Rapids Business Journal in 2019 and was selected for the MCAN Lighthouse Award for expanding access to students of all ages across Michigan. He earned his Doctor of Philosophy degree from the University of Oklahoma in Instructional Leadership and Academic Curriculum, his master's in Education from the University of Central Oklahoma, and his bachelor's in Education from Oklahoma Christian University. Dr. Pink is a very busy guy, and we're privileged today to have him share his thoughts with us. Please welcome Dr. Bill Pink.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, I'm getting comfortable today, if you don't mind. First of all, I say with the most respect as possible, Alice, you're a dog. You're a bulldog. You are a bulldog. When Alice told me that, she said, I might have something, I went to Michigan State, but you may have something with me because I went to Kendall. Hey, you're a Ferris State Bulldog because of our Kendall College of Art and Design. So wear that bulldog pin proud. It's an honor to be with you this morning. I want to get into some slides to start this conversation about the value, I just call it the value of a post-secondary credential. And I use that word credential purposely because we used to, in so many years of my career, we would talk about the value of a higher education, the value of a college degree. And now, what I believe is a more accurate description is the value of a post-secondary credential. What are our people? What are our students? What are our citizenry? What are we doing when it comes to after high school? What does that look like? And we know that it's awfully hard for folks, and we'll show some data here in a little bit, it's awfully hard for someone to truly be able to advance, make a comfortable living, have a living wage, feed your family without something afterwards. Now, I will tell you that this generation that we see now, and just even the generation now and the previous, they have things that they lean on to make money that you and I just didn't have when I was out of college or even still in high school. I was not an influencer. I wanted to be an influencer on the basketball court because I wanted to influence the guy who I was getting ready to score on. But with what we see now, there's that gig economy that really has caused quite a bit in terms of folks being able to think in their mind at the end of the day, I do not need a post-secondary credential. I'll figure it out on my own because of all these other avenues. And so I want to share some of those thoughts with you, share some data with you, and then I want to get to Q&A because I don't want to spend too much time in just me blabbing. I want to make sure that we're having a bit of dialogue in case you have questions about what we talk about. So first of all, just some real quick information about our university at Ferris State, some things about, and I will tell you, as Randall mentioned, before being president at Ferris State, I was president at Grand Rapids Community College, and I am a deep, deep believer in the mission of community college. Very deep believer. But I also, when you see that there's this transition in my career from community college to university, people say, well, Pink, what's that all about then, if you're such a deep believer in community college? Well, I'm a deep believer in community college for the things that it is capable of doing. Community college is capable of preparing an individual, whether they be 18, 28, 38, 48, 68, doesn't matter what their age, it is capable of giving them a certificate or associate degree that can put them on a workforce path and really do well for them. But the thing I also know is that when you see some of the data here in a little bit, I also know that to me, when I was the president at Grand Rapids Community College, it was important to me that we had pathways for those students to be able to leave GRCC, finish that associate degree, and then go to the university, whatever university that would be. Now, at that time, I said whichever one it is. Now I say they better go to Ferris State. But the thing I found about our university in Big Rapids is that as I was there at GRCC, I found that Ferris tended to be a very transfer-friendly institution. So much so that Ferris State had offices and held classes on our campus at GRCC. We still do today. That we wanted to make sure that transition from the associate degree to the bachelor's degree, that someone could do that in Grand Rapids, do that with Ferris State, and never leave Grand Rapids. And so when I saw what that trajectory looked like, I thought, if I'm going to be at a university, I want to make sure it is at a university that is so friendly to the students who I know in community college that it makes an easy pathway for them to be able to access that education. And friends, I'm just going to tell you, that's not the story at all of our institutions across the country. That so many of our institutions, and this, some of the data that we saw is the time that I spent on the board at American Council on Education, is the thing that we saw where some of our institutions, our universities, that would have quite a few roadblocks for students who were trying to make that transfer. That when they made it to the university in having an associate degree, when they made it to the university, they found that by the time that they finished a degree, they were dealing with a whole lot more than just 120 credit hours. And so at our institution, it is important to me that we be that transfer-friendly institution for our community colleges, as well as making sure that that traditional student that comes in as a freshman, that they can also see a pathway to completion. So, with Ferris State, we're about 10,000 students. 54% of our students are first generation. Now think about that. Over half of the students at Ferris State, they are the first generation of individual in their family to go to college. We have a very active, what we call our first gen office. That first gen office, if you have any curiosity, I encourage you to not only look it up on our website, but also take a look and come visit, because that first gen office is incredibly important to our first gen students, that they have a spot to go to that is supportive in understanding that those individuals do not have someone at home that's telling them, okay, here's what a bursar is. Here's what they mean when they talk about housing costing this much. Here's why you need to have a food and a meal plan. No one at home's telling them that, because no one at home has been to college. So 54% of our students fit that mold. It is incredibly important that we are servicing those students. And as you see, I'll talk about here in a second, because it's part of the whole conversation, the Carnegie Opportunity Institution. I'll talk about that in a second. A couple other things. 92%, this is one of the other reasons why I was proud to go to Ferris State, because of the track record of sending people not only to jobs, but to good paying jobs. I'll talk about that here in a second. So 92% of our Bulldogs stay in the state of Michigan. 92% of our graduates stay in Michigan. I tell them at graduation, they are not allowed to go to some state that's south of us that starts with an O. We do not prepare the workforce for the state of whoever. We prepare the workforce for the state of Michigan. And if they're going somewhere else, we got problems. A little over $1 billion in economic impact to our state from Ferris State, and I would say by now, over 600 industry partners. I want you to keep that one in your mind. 600 industry partners. Now, when I say industry, you name it. Whether the industry is welding in our welding engineering program, our construction management program, our heavy equipment program, all of our health professions, I mean, all across the board, it is imperative that they are built in a way that is partnered with our industry, whatever that industry is. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. And if you know anything about Ferris, especially here recently, I would not be a leader worth a flip if I did not brag a little bit about that screen. Just gonna put it there. Not to rub anything, I mean, that's not meant to rub anything, that's just the pride of our university. I was talking to some folks about leadership at a conference last week, and one of the first things I led with was, by the way, here's what we've done. 4 out of the last 5 years, national champions football, and they said, yeah, we knew you'd say something about that. I said, of course. Because one of the things about leadership is that when you have successes, especially in higher education, friends, when you have successes, you must shout those to the mountaintops. Because I assure you that when they find us stumbling, that there are others who will shout that to the mountaintop. So as you and I in higher education, when we see that there are successes on our campuses, in our state when it comes to what we are doing for state impact, we've got to tell those stories. So I always brag about those national championships. That's awesome. But let's talk about the idea of the value. What is the value of a higher education? This idea of a post-secondary credential. And I will tell you that the data is still there. When you look at what it looks like for a student who finishes because it's always the question. So if I finish a high school diploma, am I going to make, it's that basic question, am I going to make more money if I get your degree? Well, here's what the data say. And these are even looking at 2025 and 2026 predictors of what it looks like in terms of the median lifetime earnings as well as what an annual salary looks like. This is median. You go from a high school, if one has just the high school diploma, we're talking about median lifetime earnings about $1.5 million over a lifetime of a career, average about 40, probably a little bit north of $40,000 a year. And you see what the numbers look like. Friends, if you look at these data dating back to 3 and 5 years, you will find the same thing. Because people will ask, well, is this any better or worse? You find the same thing. What we also see in the data is that the high school gap between high school and associate has closed slightly over the last 3 years. But if you take that back even 10 years, the differences are still stark. We still see the data. And that's something that I believe when you have this conversation that comes up, and I have heard this conversation for years now, about the value of and it's usually just the bachelor's degree, the value of a bachelor's degree, the value of a college degree. And that to me is the conversation that I sit and I say, yeah, I am going to tell you that when you look at the data, you find the data aren't lying. They've been there for a while. And we've got to be able to, again, make sure we're telling that story of what those data say. But even more so, the idea of asking that question about the value proposition of a college degree. Because now, notice I said a college degree. I didn't say post-secondary. I want to talk about us now. The value proposition. So what happened here last year, the Carnegie classification system, when the Carnegie Foundation, they merged with the American Council on Education a year and a half or so ago. And when they made that merger, the Carnegie classification system, so Carnegie rankings, are you R1, R2, what's your ranking? You know, they rank all 4,000 of us in the country of where do you sit? Are you a community college? Are you a regional institution? Are you a regional bachelor's level, regional master? They do all those rankings. They've done that for decades. They changed a little bit this year in what Research 1, Research 2, they altered those a little bit. And after that altering of some of those qualifications, here in Michigan, we actually had another institution, Michigan Tech, is now designated an R1 institution, along with the Michigan State, Wayne State. But something else that Carnegie did this year for the first time, Carnegie said, we want to get at answering that question of the value proposition of higher education. So they added another classification. They added what they call access and earnings. And they rated all 4,000 of us, 2-year and 4-year institutions, public, private, doesn't matter. They classified all of us. And the whole idea is around those two things, access and earnings. Access. How easy or how hard is it for an individual to get into your institution? And how easy or how hard is it for students who may have more challenges financially or challenges as far as what does that look like as far as access into your institution? Is it easy? Is it hard? What does that look like? How do you make it for those individuals who are interested? Access and earnings. So when they finish your degree, what happens? Do they make a living wage? Do they make a wage that is able to feed their family? Earnings. Isn't that the value? Isn't that the question everyone wants to answer? That's the question. That's the thing that everyone will throw up and ask, is this a bachelor's degree? Is it worth it? Well, this is the value proposition right here, friends. What Carnegie did is that they ranked it in 6 different categories. Low access, low earnings, all the way up to high access, high earnings, which they call opportunity colleges or universities. Now, think about that. If you look at that chart, let's break that down. Low access, low earnings. Lower left hand. You don't want to be in that class. That means not only is it hard or not only is it uncommon and difficult for people to get into your institution, but that also means that even once they finish that degree, might get a job, might have something to do after. 51 institutions in their classification ranked as low access, low earnings. Not the list you want to be on. So then it goes up. So low access, medium earnings. Hard to get in, but you make a little bit more money. Low access, high earnings. Those are you're probably in some cases, maybe some of your elites, higher elite, some maybe a couple of your Ivy Leagues, maybe those that are very hard to get into, and they make it hard in terms of just, they really don't probably not paying a whole lot of attention just to giving people a good pathway into the institution. But once you finish that degree, if you finish, boy, you're going to make pretty good money. So then you go to the other side. Lower side, high access. They let a lot of people in. A lot of individuals can get in. They make good pathways for you to get in. But once you finish, you're probably not making a whole lot of money. Now, that could be due to a number of things, friends. Sometimes it's due to how little or how much that institution is connected to the industries that they serve. It could be that they make little to no effort after it's over, career-wise, to Career Center and career guidance to help students get into those. It could be a number of things, but for some reason, they have a lot coming in, but once you finish. And then you have high access, medium earnings, and then that upper quadrant, high access, high earnings. That means that there are good pathways for students to get in. You have processes to help students be able to access, get in, get admitted, get everything going as far as their college career is concerned. And if they finish your degree, they typically make a living wage for them and their family. And that trajectory looks good. 481 schools out of the 4,000 of us rated as an opportunity college or university. About 481. Proud to say that one of those institutions is in Big Rapids. And that for us, a school that's 140 years old, that we've been for decades telling people, look, you finish at Ferris, you're going to get a good job. We've been telling people that forever. Now we got someone else telling them. Because you've got that third party that comes in and says, well, let's really take a look at this. But friends, this is the question. This is the thing that we're all looking for. This is what we're all wondering. What is the value? And so when you, after we're done, don't do it on your phone right now, but after we're done, when you go out to Carnegie to that and you Google Carnegie classification and you go to their website, you see every institution, how everyone rated. You see all of that information. It is very public. You'll find every institution, 2-year and 4-year, you'll find on that list. And it will show you and tell you which quadrant that they landed after this extensive study has been done. And that, as far as what we're concerned, this higher education conversation, it is so important for folks to understand and know, well, here's what that means from a standpoint of access and earnings. Now, some people may want to go to college and it may not be just about that. They may are looking for something else. That's cool. That's fine. But this is the one that many people question us on the most, isn't it? This is the one that when they say, well, yeah, you can go there for enrichment and all those things, but when it boils down to it, am I paying all that money to get a job at Starbucks? I encourage you to take a look at those lists because that starts getting at this idea of value proposition. The biggest issue that I think we have today in higher education when it comes to this, friends, when we talk about, when I'm asked, Bill, so what is it that really is the reason for students who may not make it to some of these? Because I'm proud of what we do at our campus. I love the fact that we have a bachelor's and associate degree in welding. Welding engineering is a bachelor's degree. Construction management, that's a bachelor's degree. Automotive engineering, bachelor's degree. You can get associates in those and just go straight to work. But those degrees are some of those jobs, those kind of jobs. Our Michigan College of Optometry, we forever have been the only institution in the state of Michigan with an optometry program. Our College of Optometry. Now, over on the southeast side of the state, Detroit Mercy has started one. That's great on that side of the state. More power to them. I still want to anyway. But it's those kind of, so a College of Optometry, a College of Pharmacy, a health professions, a nursing degree that goes from the bachelor's all the way to the doctorate degree. It's those kind of things. If we're offering those kind of programs, we better be graduating folks into good jobs. And they had better be connected to industry. But in many cases, friends, it is about exposure and attraction. Here's what I mean by that. So last school year, had one of our sociology classes asked me to come in and do a guest lecture and talk about sociology as far as talking about, since I had been at GRCC and lived in Grand Rapids and lived in different metropolitan areas, talking about sociology things as far as the urban core is concerned and what it looks like, mobility, all those good things. So one of the things the thing I started out with that class, I asked them a question. I said, do any of you know what a surveyor is? One young lady raised her hand. I said to the class, hey, don't worry about it. When I was your age, I wouldn't have raised my hand either because I had no clue what a surveyor was. So I asked her, and she was right. She said, well, I think that okay. And so then I started describing to people, you know that guy, sometimes when you're driving down, you see him with this rod thing in his hand, and he's looking, and you have no idea what he's doing. You think maybe he's spying on someone. Or I said, here's what he's doing. That's a surveyor. You guys, but you don't know what that is. But did you know, to our students, did you know that we have a survey engineering program on our campus? And did you know that when students finish that degree, they can go make pretty good money as a surveyor? Didn't know that. Why? Well, friends, we have in our country, I believe, a problem of lack of exposure. Many of our students do not know what some of those career paths are. Many of our students come to campus and they may have seen all their life people wearing glasses, but they have no idea that there's actually a profession that they could learn right on our campus and a degree that they could get that would give them that career as an optometrist, but they don't know that. The idea of plastics engineering, that's an awesome program on our campus. I guarantee you that if you did a cross-section of 100 Ferris State students, I guarantee you 90% probably would say, I don't know what that is. There's an exposure issue, friends. And if we're going to attract students into these opportunities, we've got to help them know what it looks like. Here's what that is. There was a study back, decades ago when I was working on my doctorate degree. I saw this study that asked eighth graders in an urban center, in a city, eighth graders, asked the eighth graders that question that you and I answered for years. What do you want to be when you grow up? And this was probably back in the early 2000s. So they asked those eighth graders, what do you want to be when you grow up? A percentage of them said, I want to work at 7-Eleven. Now, why do you think they wanted to work at 7-Eleven? And when they ask them, two things. One, every time I go to 7-Eleven, there's a person behind the counter in a uniform, and they're handling money. So they must be important. That's an exposure issue, friends. Because if I grow up in the urban core and I never have folks who say, hey, let me take you and show you, let's go to the university campus and have some programs there and see what the university looks like. Let's go to this company, let's go to this business and see what those things look like. If there are no efforts for exposure, that's what we're dealing with. We see it at Ferris. We see it from we have quite a few students that come from Detroit and Flint and Kalamazoo. And in many cases, they're coming because they've got a degree thing in mind. They've got this idea, but it's based on what they know. And I get it. We've just got to be more diligent in exposing as we attract our students to what the possibilities are. I'll give you a quick example, and then I want to take questions. So, when I first made it to Ferris, we have on campus what's called a heavy equipment program. Now, that program is, to me, it's one of the most fun programs to go and visit. It's one of those that if I can go kind of sneak out and go, I can't sneak out too much, Randall, but anyway, they notice me. But that program, heavy equipment, you go over to their lab, they have some of the coolest toys over there. And I mean, because they work on and they learn how to work on mechanics of large diesel implements. The large combines that you see, they work on those. They know how to program those. You go over there, you may see several 18-wheelers, just the cabs, just in the lab, and their lab is amazing. But what they found out is that they had an enrollment problem. No students. Hard to get students in. So back about 4 years ago, that faculty got together and they said, we have to do something about this. So they said, what if we contact schools in and around the area and we invite them to campus for 2 days? They can come either the first or second day. And we invite them to campus, and we invite our industry partners. We invite our companies, Train and all these different companies, to come as well and ask them, bring your biggest, baddest toys with you. And we're going to just help marry this whole idea of the student and the industry and what that job looks like. And in many cases, you sit in the cab of some of these things that they're working on, you sit down, and you don't even have to drive the thing. You set the GPS, and it does the work for you. They always tell me, Dr. Pink, you need to come and ride one of these. I'm still scared to do that, but... So they had the first diesel days. They called it diesel days. They had the first one back in 2021. And the whole thing was all about exposing students to what we do in heavy equipment. So all of a sudden, you have all these high school kids that came in, and you see some of the toys. They all came in and learned about, oh, so you mean there's actually a job that does this? You mean that actually, and I can learn that here, and I can even come work for you? Diesel Days, within 2 years, the enrollment of our heavy equipment program increased 200%. Because all of a sudden now, students knew about this possibility of a pretty cool career path. And that list of about 10 or 6 schools became about 16, 20 schools, to where this year, Diesel Days, our Diesel Days that happened back in October, here's what's happened now. There's about 50 to 60 companies that come in and about 700 to 800 students that come through. And now, because of the success of it, we hold a Diesel Days in Southeast Oklahoma as well. Michigan. Still back in Oklahoma. That happens every once in a while. But we held one last year over in the Novi, Detroit area. And it was another Diesel Days to say and make that marriage, right? It's about exposure. Because if it works on the west side of the state, it probably works on the east side of the state too, of students understanding and learning this is a possibility for me. And the incredible impact that we saw and continue to see. And part of that time that they spend on campus is with our admissions folks talking about, let's talk about college, because here's how you can get to this. And they walk campus, they see campus, they go eat on campus. It is an exposure not only to the industry, it's an exposure to higher education that more than likely some of these students have never had. But if we're not that intentional, friends, it's going to be a struggle. And it's going to continue to be a struggle. And for those type programs, that is the biggest key. As you see, as I mentioned, the results. So that for me, when we talk about this idea of a post-secondary education, a post-secondary credential, whether it be something that is immediate as far as the community college is concerned or your career tech or whatever that looks like, we know more and more about the fact that students are going to need something. I still feel that we make a strong case for the work that we do when it comes to higher education, the university, the academy. Our responsibility now is making sure folks understand what that value proposition is. Now we've got data of a third party that says, here's what that value proposition is. For some, that Carnegie classification is a bragging point. For others, it's a challenge. Because when you look at that rating and you say, uh-oh, wait a minute. And of course we do what we always do. Then we want, well, wait a minute, if I didn't rate so high, well, what are they using to, okay, we do all those things, right? But at the end of the day, they measured everyone in the same way. And what it means for us being higher education, we have to pay attention to that idea of value proposition, because there are those who are really questioning us right now. Probably in my career of 35 years in higher education, probably the most questioning that I've ever seen of my profession, of what we do, is what I see right now. I'll leave you with this, and then I'll take some questions. Just last week, I'll make sure I'm leaving time. Good. Just last week, I was at the American Council on Education conference, had a couple of panels that I was speaking on. And that conference is in Washington, D.C., and it gathered several hundred presidents, chancellors, vice presidents, board members from all over the world, actually, mostly from the United States, several from other countries, to come together and talk about what is the state of higher education right now, what do we need to do, what are some of the best practices, all those good things. Well, since you're in Washington, D.C., you typically have access to some of the administration. The Undersecretary of Education, Nicholas Kent, spoke to us on Friday morning. And I will tell you, friends, it was one of the most eye-opening moments for me in my work. Because Undersecretary Kent looked at over probably 500 higher education leaders in our country, and he told us that we're bad. He told us how bad a job we're doing, told us how we need to, here's what the concept was that he shared, which was probably the most memorable for me. He said, you guys basically, and this is paraphrasing, you need to be aware of what the 5 stages of grief are, and you need to get to acceptance as quickly as possible. What it told me, friends, is that you and I, who believe in this work, we have work to do, and that work is never at a shortage. But we have messages that I think we have been very delinquent in giving. One of the worst things that we do in higher education is tell our story. We don't do that well enough. We have amazing stories on this campus, amazing stories of students doing amazing things that no one ever finds out about. It's the same thing on my campus. We tell our story really lousy. When we start doing better at telling the story of not just here's who we are, here's what we do, and our students can tell those stories as well, that is so helpful to our whole process, because when we start telling our story and we start making sure folks know here's what a higher education means, here's what our students are doing, and a student is standing there going, here's what I did, here's what I received while I was at Hope College, here's what I received while I was at Ferris State University, and here's the job I have now. But until we do better at telling that story, friends, we'll continue to have the headwinds that we see right now. And what the Undersecretary told us last Friday, as I said earlier out in the lobby, this pendulum is swinging all the way over here right now. And in higher education, we're scrambling to try to meet what they're saying we have to meet. And if you haven't looked at, just Google sometime, ask ChatGPT, what are the July 1st higher education requirements coming from the administration? Just look at that, okay? July 1. And he told us on Friday, by the way, we're going to be ready for July 1, he said. Don't you worry, we're going to be ready for July 1. That pendulum is over here right now. And we're scrambling to do that. On my campus, with the understanding, as I remind my team, that at some point that pendulum is going to swing back over here. And you know what we'll be doing? Scrambling to do what this is, because they're going to undo all this. But let me give you this. In all of that pendulum swinging, when you talk about higher education, I don't believe, this is all pink opinion here, I don't believe that pendulum swing for us, I don't think it will be as drastic in terms of how extreme this is, because honestly, the last administration before the present one, they were pretty extreme as well in saying, you guys got to change. They were very extreme as well. So what it means for us is that we have to be more so than ever prepared to make some changes that we've never made before. And the academy is going to have to look different 3 years from now, in my opinion, than what it does now. Responsiveness, relevance, they're going to be at a height for us. And it's not going to slow down. And on that cheery note, let me take questions from you. Can I take questions? Is there a microphone? Good. I would love to take any questions that you might have today. Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any questions? Well, I can't answer, Randall will.
Hello, hello. Oh, hello, hello. Thank you.
Yeah.
We live in an age of, number one, misinformation. We live in an age of influencers. We live in an age of the quick buck. I don't know how you're going to overcome that, because it's only going to get worse, especially the influencers, that they can make all this money, not have to go to college or anything. So regardless of what administration is in power, that's going to be an ongoing technology. It's just going to go.
Yes.
How are you going to deal with that?
So I'm going to retire, and a few weeks ago on campus, we have every year what we call an enrollment summit, where we bring, there was over 200 people on campus that came together to talk about enrollment, talk about challenges and issues and what do we need to be doing. Among that 200 were some of our students that we were able to talk to as well. The education company EAB was a part of that conversation. And EAB had a couple of guys there that presented to us to talk about the national landscape. And one thing they talked about is exactly what you just mentioned. Here's what they talked about. They showed 4 videos, influencers, 4 videos on TikTok. And all 4 of these, one of them was a guy who said, hey, guys, I just walked across the stage. I just finished at such and such university, and I'm heading over to Starbucks for my job as a barista. That's what this degree has done for me. That was his message. Had several tens, if hundreds of thousands of views on that. So a lot of people watching it. Another person just basically said, I just finished a degree at such and such, and it didn't do a thing for me. I don't have a single job offer. I don't know what I'm going to do. It was that kind of thing. What they were showing us is that while we have all these messages and all the billboards and all the things that we do to market our institutions, that marketing that those individuals were doing, they're one of many. We have to make sure, their encouragement to us was some of your points that you make in higher ed of, we've got this going, we got that, doesn't really matter. Most of the things that we claim as our marketing, some of those things are things that, yeah, you ought to be doing that anyway. And the point was, you have to make sure that you have those kind of stories that are going out about the institution. You've got to have students. You have to encourage some of your graduates who are finishing, walking across the stage and going into good jobs. You need to encourage them, hey, how do we help you make that video? How do we help you do that? Because you have an awesome story. We have got to fight. You got to fight fire with fire. And if technology is the thing that's kicking your rear end, you got to get it. You got to kick back. And so it's a thing of making sure we are utilizing the technology to do some of those very things. If it's videos out there that students are looking at that are student-made and it's not the institution, how do I help the students make those videos? I was in the airport last week as I was flying out to D.C. for the conference, and I'm sitting there in the airport, and a young lady kind of makes her way over toward me. And then she said, Dr. Pink, I look up, and she said, I go to Ferris. And she said, told me where she was going, and she talked about someone that we both knew. And I said, oh, good. So I said, so what are you majoring in? What's your major? She said, I graduate this May in construction management. And I said, oh, you want to make money, don't you? She said, yeah, I'm going to make, yeah. She said, like, yeah, I'm going to make money. I said, are you working already? She said, yeah, I already have a company that's hired me. And once I finish the degree, then I'm good to go with them. I'm staying with them, a construction company. And she already was set and happy, thrilled about that Ferris State degree. By the way, our construction management graduates, when they graduate at Ferris, they walk across the stage. They don't wear a mortarboard. They wear a hard hat. And it has the company that they're going to work for across, it's their hard hat. They don't throw those. But every one of them, it's cool for that graduate because you see them all and they are proud because they're going into good paying jobs. But it's those kind of stories. That young lady, we got to capture that. We got to capture that, and we got to shout that out. Did you? No, well, I flew out. I was leaving. So it's a thing of telling her, because so what I told her, I said, first of all, we have an appointment in May, you and I, on the stage. We're going to do that thing. I said, but you need to come by and see me. It's usually what I tell her. You got to come by and see me before that. When they come by and see me, that's the key, because that's when I sit down and say, tell me more about it. And then it's that thing of getting them excited about their own story and saying, I got someone I want you to meet. We get them connected to our marketing folks, and they do an amazing job. I need it to be her. I need them to help her do that, though. I don't need that just to be on the Ferris State site. I need that to be on her Twitter tweet. I need that to be on her Facebook, her Instagram. That's the key. We got to combat it as it comes, because it's coming. I say AI and NIL are the same thing to me, because they're both moving so fast.
All right. Our granddaughter has a degree in phlebotomy, and she does because Muskegon Junior College came into their high school and started that program of getting credits. Yep. Towards that degree. Where do you fit into that type of program?
So with phlebotomy would be one that would actually either lead into some of what we do around. I would actually say that she would come to us in our lab tech program, lab coordinator. That program, that bachelor's degree program, those are the folks when they leave our place, they're the ones who are at the hospital that when they come and suck the blood out of my arm, it goes to our people that are in some basement dungeon somewhere with everyone's blood. That program for us is amazing because those students get hired quite a bit. But going back to what you said about how they do that in the school, part of the community college and part of what we were doing at GRCC, and you'll be familiar with it, is not only delivering those programs to the high school, but also here in Michigan, we were really big on what we call middle college. So that student, what we were doing is we would go into the high school. If the high school said, yeah, let's have that relationship, we would actually start with those students who were selected. If they said, I want to do it, usually they're going to be selected. They had to have had to be able to prove they could do the coursework. But as a sophomore, they started our classes. As a junior, they were still taking our classes in high school. As a senior, a lot of our classes and a few high school, and then they go a 13th year to high school. That 13th year, that was almost exclusively our classes at the college and maybe one class high school, so that at the end of that 13th year, they graduate with their high school diploma and their associate degree, and they've paid $0 for that associate degree. So they leave at 18 and they're walking into the school as a junior. It's those kind of we had several of those at GRCC. Those are the kind of things that help that pathway move along faster. Yeah.
I'm here, as most folks here are, as a firm believer in lifelong education. I turned 70 the other month, and that has not dwindled at all. My academic interests are still strong, both in learning and teaching. I have two assumptions that are discouraging to me, and I don't know how realistic or true they are. I sense a little bit of both, and I'm trusting that you might be able to shed some light, either encouragement or a direction. One of my assumptions is that there is no more intergenerational learning possible because our worlds are so different. The elders used to be needed to teach the youngers, but the youngers are growing up into a world that is completely different than the one that the elders grew up in. And so that any education I might be involved in is rather limited, confined. I want to know if I'm too idealistic when I say I believe that our generation still has some knowledge that is critically important to younger generations. And I also want to think that I might be able to be involved in arenas where I can learn from the younger generation. That education might still be, my lifelong education still might have some intergenerational connection. The other assumption I have, my field was humanities. I have 2 graduate degrees in the humanities. And the news is that humanities is shrinking in higher education and will probably shrivel up, Is that just an acceptance I've got to learn to grieve? Or is there hope for a broader education than just getting a good job? Income.
That's a lot there. And I may ask you to repeat the second one because I'll talk about the first one and probably forget the second one, just knowing me. So first of all, what you mentioned about that philosophy, that idea and that ideal of philosophy of how that whole thing that we all grew up in, the younger that you learn from the older. That for me it was a biblical example. That's what we did in church. That's what we were taught. You learn from them. I think where we are on that is that we are very. I think that still happens, but I think it's more siloed than it's ever been. And here's what I mean by that. So I have just come to the fact that I believe that when that is happening, it's probably happening more so in my conversation with my students. When I tell students on campus, come see me. And when they come see me, I'm asking them, so what are you going to, tell me about your major, what are you going to, and the level of mentorship that even, from a president's standpoint, that I still feel like is my responsibility, that to me is still important. And I think it's important to our students. And if it wasn't important to our students, the proof I have for you that it is when I look at my LinkedIn and I see how many Ferris State students are friends of mine on LinkedIn. That says something to me. Because that's them saying, Pink, tell me something. Help me out here. What should this look like? What does this look like? So it is still there, but it's very individual. The reason why it is so individual, this is total transparency. All Pink opinion, don't you dare record it and tell anyone I said this. The reason I think it is so individual is because on a holistic scale, I think this generation we see coming up now, they see us, they see all the nastiness, and it's hard for some of them to look at us and say, I want to learn from you. And that may not be any one person's fault, but if we're not doing some things individually and as many as on the one-offs, if we're not doing that, then we're going to prove them to be right. Because our silence would be that. So I hear much more now, and it's a sad thing to me, and I haven't said it in a commencement ceremony yet, but probably I'm going to approach the day where I do say something that on a scale, many of our students look at our generation and feel like we failed them in that. So I think that's why it's important that we're able to say, you know what, in spite of the rest of the rhetoric and the noise, in spite of the noise, but I still have a job to do. I can still do that. I can make my world better. Secondly, what was that second thing again? I knew I was going to forget that. Is there any hope for the humanities? Yes, there is. So just this last week, we were having some conversations at the conference about a lot of resurgence when it comes to folks realizing, folks being some of our industry people, realizing that some of those things that we like to call soft skills and some of those critical thinking and skills and all those things, many more are starting to think, you know what, that's what I actually learned when I was in the humanities, when I was in the social sciences. I was actually learning those things. That was actually helpful to me. I think there is that resurgence. At the same time, I will tell you, when it comes to my job, and as far as a president in higher education, because of the space that we're in right now, and have been for a while, my number one sermon is talking about how we send them to the workforce. And it has little to do with what I know is happening within the humanities in preparing that workforce. Because the folks in Lansing and the folks in DC, they're asking, so how many of your folks are going and staying in Michigan, and how's that job looking for them? So that has to continue to be our messaging, because that's the messaging that's going to help continue to have a state have some level of faith in what we do. Great question. So.
Okay, question from over here in the front.
Yeah.
What does Ferris do to help the student that comes in as a freshman, has no idea what they want to do? I'm a full believer in terms of God-given gifts and talents, but it also has to relate to what job opportunities there are for people with those gifts and talents. So what does the freshman get?
When that student comes in, one of the things, and I can say this from experience, because when we took the job at Ferris, our daughter had finished her first year at GRCC, and she came with us. So when she enrolled at Ferris as a sophomore, and it happens at the freshman, if you're a new student, we get you connected to what I think is one of the better career services offices I've seen. Because they immediately with her said, let's do this inventory. Let's see what you like. Let's see what you like to do. Let's see what you're good at. She did several inventories. Where she ended up going is that she ended up thinking, you know what, this is pointing toward healthcare. And she thought, that I'm okay with that. Fast forward now 3.5 years later, she graduates this May, her bachelor's in healthcare management, an associate degree in sonography, ultrasound. And right now she has spent a year, this whole academic year, she has spent in Goshen, Indiana, at the hospital in Goshen, working as an intern, as a Ferris State student intern in their sonography area. She is fired up about going into that career path. So what happens there is that we are able to get those kind of things done and then connect them to what those possibilities are, help them hone in on what that looks like. And I will tell you this as well, as far as Ferris is concerned. I think this is a blessing and a curse for us. I could talk more about it if I had more time. But many of our students, we have a healthy amount that come to us not sure what they want to do. An amazing number of our students, when they come to Ferris, they already know what they want to do, because we have so many specialized programs. They're thinking, well, if I'm going to be a construction management, it's either going to be us or someone such and such, I'm going to Ferris for construction management. And usually they walk in the door, many of them already knowing what they're going to do. They may end up changing once we get a hold of them, but either they're going to be that much more solid in saying that's what I want to do, or they're going to explore some more. And that for me is a healthy thing to see happen. But I believe we do a really good job at helping students explore, because if we have 180 programs on our campus, which we do, we have some choices for you. So let's explore those.
One last question.
I want to build on Gary's just briefly and make a plea. Exposure and access is preceded by unspoken expectations as little kids in the home. And that leads people all the way through doctoral degrees ending up sometimes with, I have friends that happen to going, oops, I don't want to do this, but I got corralled into unspoken expectations. What do we do at Ferris to try to look at interest inventory to expose gaining students into areas they don't know they're interested, because all they've looked at up to that point is skills, aptitude, interest if they knew what they were, but they don't.
Yeah, so for us, I will tell you, when you talk about a campus that is 54% first gen, there aren't a lot of them that are coming to us with that burden of what home said you better do. Most of the time, that 54% comes to us saying, okay, they want me to get this done, and I don't know how to get this done, so help me get this done. And so that, for us, gives us a little more blank slate to work with, which I think is fine. But a lot of times with our students, those levels, the expectations they walk in our doors with are expectations typically of finish this thing. And we talk about it a lot. I tell our students all the time, many start, fewer finish. Be one of those that finishes. And I think that from our standpoint, we try our best to make sure our students not only are connected to and understand what those possible paths are, but to also connect with other students who are connected to those paths, so they can help tell you, here's what this looks like. I'll give you an example. Many of our students, they will get in and they'll realize, to your point, okay, this is not what I want to do. And we can encourage, not only encourage, if you need to shift, but if you're going to shift, understand you have a lot of choices over here. So for example, this young man that our daughter is dating, he graduated back in December from Ferris, this past December, and his degree was business, is a bachelor's in business administration. Well, his degree started out before, that wasn't what he came to Ferris for. He came to Ferris for our professional golf management program, which, by the way, that's a crazy, amazing program. We prepare the golf industry with professionals, with the country clubs that you golf at, and many of those, if you're wearing the bulldog on your shirt, chances are someone working at that country club anywhere in the country might be a Ferris State graduate. So he was a professional golf management major. He found out in about year 3 that, I think I want to play golf for the fun of it and not for my job. So that program is in our College of Business. So he was able to shift over to business administration with rather seamlessly and make that change. That is encouragement to help them know, if it's not what you need, if it's not what you want, let's not do it. Because the worst thing you can do, as I say to our students, one of the worst things you can do in life is get up every morning and go to a job that you hate. So let's see if we can prepare you for the job that you love for the rest of your life. That's the goal. Friends, that's my email address up there. If there's anything, the further conversations, if they still have it, of further questions or anything I can do with you and for you, please let me know. And if you have any of that, I would love to connect with you, and I appreciate being able to share time with you this morning. Go Dogs!
Thank you. And we will post that email in our happenings, so you don't have to write it down right now. Okay, thank you again. We're glad you could all be here and enjoy the day, and spring is coming.